Hey friend, welcome to Grounded, the Vestibular podcast. I'm Dr. Madison Oak, aka the Vertigo Doctor. I am the vestibular physical therapist who is here to help you with all things dizziness, imbalance, and vertigo. In this podcast, we explore the fascinating world of vestibular disorders. Come with me as we dive into the journey to discover the mysteries of dizziness, the brain, inner ear, and the balance mechanisms that keep us grounded. Whether you've been managing your dizziness for one day or for 25 years, we are going to get real about what it takes to manage dizziness, handle the anxiety cycle, and thrive, not just survive, with your vestibular disorder. First, I want to remind you that this is never medical advice. Remember, this podcast is for informational purposes only and may or may not be the best fit for you and your personal situation. It shall not be construed as medical advice. The information and education provided here is not intended or implied to supplement or replace professional medical treatment, advice, and/or diagnosis. Always check with your own physician, medical professionals, and healthcare team before trying or implementing any information found here. Meet me in your coziest chair while we navigate the highs and lows and the twists and turns of the vestibular universe. Welcome to Grounded. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today with me, I have a lovely, wonderful human being guest, Sara. And Sara is going to introduce herself a little bit, but Sara has been a vestibular group fit member for quite some time. She has truly had some phenomenal progress in different things she's been able to do. And I'm really excited for her to share her story with all of you today. And so welcome, Sara. Thanks so much for being here.
Hello, everybody. I feel like I have had some great progress. I've had some setbacks and some progress. I'm so honored to be here with everybody. So honored to be a part of this show. Honored to be a part of this group. It's to me, it's so special. Honestly, I could sit here and cry about it. I feel that every time I read stories from Vestibular Group Fit, um, just a little bit about me. I have been a part of this group for maybe a little over a year, 2 years maybe.
I think so, yeah.
Um, right around there. I've been a nurse for about 22 years, which is a really long time. Um, I I am married. I'm a wife. I got married in the middle of all of this journey. So about 6 months into being diagnosed, I got married, which was pretty crazy. Wasn't sure if I would walk down the aisle, but I did. I know, it was amazing. I have an 18-year-old wonderful son. I have 2 crazy dogs. I'm a sister, so I have 3 sisters. I have an amazing family. And I'm just an outdoor enthusiast. I think that's one of the reasons I really love being a part of this group, and watching you, Dr. Madison. Like, you just inspire me because I love to be in the snow. I love to hike, bike, just in general, be outside and be a wanderer. We love to get lost in adventure and meet random people and hear their stories. So,
I love
yeah.
it. And I love that you share so much of that with the group and you're always talking about your cool things being outside. And not only you said I'm an inspiration to you, but like you are an inspiration to me. People like you make this job worth it. So I'm really glad you're here. And thanks so much for stopping by and introducing yourself.
Yeah. Thanks for having
So,
me.
oh my gosh, it is so my pleasure. You rock. So, I remember kind of where you started in vestibular group fit, but I would love it if you could tell me and our audience kind of your best summary of your story with your vestibular disorder and your diagnosis and all of that as much as you're comfortable sharing.
Absolutely. Man, it's so hard to talk about this without getting really emotional. So I'll just apologize ahead of time.
That's okay. We can
Um,
pause anytime you want.
that's okay. And I will just say before I start any of this that before I start any of this, nothing is meant to be political, but this is just my story. So I'm just going to say it like that. But my journey started 2 days after I got my COVID shot, and so just going to leave that blanket statement there. I took it. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I couldn't see. I couldn't feel my arms or my legs, and man, I just remember being completely obviously it's freaked out, right? You can't feel your arms or your legs. I wasn't like blackout blind, but I felt like I had this
Mhm.
film over my eyes. and I just walked around my house trying to rub my arms and legs. And I will never forget that feeling of just sitting on the couch praying myself back to sleep, thinking, well, I'm going to go to sleep and I'm going to wake up tomorrow and never see again. Um, and I woke up and I was able to go to work the next day, but things were just never really the same after that. And everything just kind of took it like a downward spiral from there. Things got worse a little bit, day from day. I started to have trouble walking. My legs started to feel like 100-pound weights, which I never could really understand. When I was sitting, my body would start to feel like I was constantly pulling to the right, like I was always fighting gravity. Objects would start to move underneath me. If I was sitting in a chair, it would make this quick movement. If I was sitting on a couch, it would make a quick movement. When I would stop moving, when I would actually sit still, my body was always rocking and swaying. So I was constantly nauseous. I was constantly feeling like I was on a boat. I was disoriented all the time. I had no like center of gravity. Ooh, words would like move around the computer on me. When I would walk, the floor kind of just felt like it was marshmallows or like I was on a trampoline. I didn't really it was so hard for me to explain, but my head would feel like it was like a big hot air balloon ready for liftoff all the time, or like a big bobblehead, like if you could picture me like that. Um, and in my head, I was like, I am losing my mind. And your brain just starts to go places it shouldn't go. And I did all kinds of things to just make I don't know how to say the word, I get brain fog sometimes, but not exceptions for myself, but you make accommodations for yourself at work. Like I would raise my computer to a higher level because I'm a nurse. And so I would take care of patients and I couldn't look up or down or side to side. So I would do different things to try to make it work because I was absolutely scared of losing my job. And so a lot of, like, I always think about fear and I'm like, it did horrible things to me during this journey, but it also motivated me. Um, like I was scared of your brain I took me to this place of like, I'm gonna lose my house, I'm gonna do all these things. So it kept me motivated to stay at work, which when I look back, I'm like a lot of those things and like I run a surgery center, so I'm moving around a lot. I think a lot of that was almost like vestibular therapy before I knew about vestibular therapy. Um,
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
because you run around like roller skates practically. So some of that fear was good fear, some of it was horrible fear. But in that, I had no idea what was going on with me. And so the world just got really small and it got really, really scary for me. I went from living my best life. Like I loved my life. We were snowboarding, we were hiking, we were biking, just, adventure every day to like lived on this tiny little corner in my couch. And I couldn't be a mom, couldn't be a wife. I wasn't married at the time, but I just I was so scared. I couldn't talk. I stopped talking, literally stopped talking to everybody in my life. I stopped responding to texts, to phone calls, stopped talking to my coworkers. Nobody knew what was going on. My own fiance literally stopped talking to him. And my world got dark and I couldn't do it anymore. I was like, and I feel horrible saying this, but I'm okay saying it now that like I didn't want to be alive anymore. And I know there's people that
Mhm.
have things that are so much worse than what I went through, so I feel bad saying that, but I didn't wanna be alive. I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't wanna be here."
yeah.
And I'm so thankful, right, that I had friends that never stopped. Even though I didn't respond to their text messages, they never stopped texting me. And, like, I have this beautiful mother who never stopped praying for me, and, and I'm sure you hear this from other people that, like, my brain got stuck in these experiences, like
Mhm,
I would
mhm.
go to my best friend's house and I had a dizzy moment, so I wouldn't go to her house. Or like I went to church and the words would move around and I got dizzy, so I stopped going to church and I stopped going to my sister's house. I didn't want to drive to this place because I got dizzy. And I just stopped everything in my life because everything triggered something. And so that little place on my couch became my
Mm-hmm.
home. And I finally, after seeing like everybody probably in this group, I saw like a million doctors, um, finally got, my diagnosis, which was vestibular migraine, like vestibular hypofunction, some central vertigo and 3PD. And the problem I think with some of that was like they would give you the diagnosis. I got a diagnosis from a neuro-otologist. Yeah, and he was great, but he was like, "Here's your diagnosis, but I'm not gonna treat you. Like, I don't treat you." Great.
Super
So then it's
frustrating.
yeah, right? So it's like, go find somebody to treat you, and, we all have those struggles, but I did find a great team. I found, the most amazing physical therapist. I do say that you guys are the most wonderful medical professionals that healthcare has, and I say that all the time to people. I'm like, "Please go be a physical therapist because
Well,
it's
thank
amazing."
you.
You guys are like the smartest people ever.
Thank you.
Um, and like
You're too kind.
once No, I'm serious because once I got my physical therapist, that's when things
Mm-hmm.
started to get better
Mm-hmm.
because she was the one that knew. She understood the disorders. She
Mm-hmm.
understood how to help me get better. And it was like a heavy year of vestibular therapy that things started to get better. And I still, do it. It's been about 3 years and I still go
Mm-hmm.
through it. Um, So it was like tons of tests, tons of vestibular therapy. Things started to get better. I joined vestibular group fit. Um, and I guess like if I could condense it all, like I was thinking about this podcast and I thought about a book that I had read a really long time ago. And the title of the book was it's called A Long Way Back. And I was like, if I could give my journey to recovery a title, it would be A Long Way Back because I feel like that's what it's been. It's been this process of I think we all talk about the treatment pie, and it's been this process of medications, a solid couple of years of vestibular therapy, tons of prayer. I think one of the biggest things that I've done is somebody told me in the beginning, he said, I want you to just step outside of your own needs and start being of service to others. Like, stop focusing on you and focus on the needs of others. And I started
Mm-hmm.
volunteering at my church, and that was huge to me, just like it took the focus off of me. Um, Lots of talk therapy, lots of slow movement. And it was so much more. I had to change from go to just like focusing on I need to take a nap and that's okay. I need to slow down and that's okay. And like I had to listen to my body, which I'm not very good at. So like it's been a lot. I had to like I think one of the biggest things for me was learning how to like unwind from that trauma of this disorder, the things that we attach ourselves to and
Mm-hmm.
how to detach from all of that because that sticks inside of you and it sticks in our brain. Um and I had to really learn how to like be okay with this new like version of me. And that's hard because I really
Totally.
liked the old me.
Yeah, totally.
I loved me. Um but that was really like the turning point for me. I think in my recovery was just like in my healing, I would say, is just like this is going to be my new life. And I had to let go of anger because I carried around a lot of anger and a lot of bitterness. And I just started embracing like the blessings that came with this journey, and embracing like I think who God made me through this journey. And I'm starting to dig this version of myself. So that's me. That's me in 3 to 8 minutes, I guess. I hope I didn't go over.
That's totally fine if you did. I think you did an excellent job. And before we hit record, you said, I do really like me. And I think that's a really important thing to recognize is you said a lot of really great stuff. And I've been furiously writing. If you saw my head down, that is why. Because I think that there's a lot of really amazing things that you said. And I want to circle back to one thing at the very beginning that you said, and that you're like, there's a lot of things that are worse than dizziness that could be happening to me. And although dizziness likely is not going to kill you,
Yeah.
it is typically pretty benign. Not always, but typically. It doesn't mean that we don't get to fix the problem. It doesn't mean that we don't get to take it seriously. And I think a lot of people say, well, I have this dizziness thing, but it's like not as bad as this other person I know. So I see why my doctors might not take it that seriously, or I'm not taking it that seriously, or I'm just kind of going to brush it to the side. And if that works for you, that works for you. But I really encourage everyone not to stop fighting for a diagnosis, management system, some sort of treatment plan, because these things are manageable. And
Yeah.
if you had a heart attack or if you broke an arm, you would still go to the ER.
Yep.
Both of those require a doctor's visit. And so when we think about these things, trying not to belittle, like, oh, it's just dizziness. Like, it is interfering with your life. It is really debilitating. It is really scary. It's really isolating. It's all of those things that you talked about. And so I first want to validate that all of those feelings are very real.
I
Very,
think too,
very real.
right. And like not like being okay. How do I say this? Like, it's okay to feel how we feel. It's okay to feel dark.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay that we get caught in those dark places because it is scary when you don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay. We don't, I don't want to get trapped there, but like, it's a normal feeling when you don't know what's
Mm-hmm.
going on and our bodies are scared and they're kind of freaking out a little bit. And there's not a lot of help in the beginning. A lot of
Totally.
doctors don't know what's going on, and for somebody to just be like, "Well, here you go, but I can't treat you." Well,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, not super helpful. One of the biggest problems with that specific issue is that it's literally not taught in medical school.
Mhm.
They're like, you have a vestibular system. It's attached to your hearing organ. Next slide. And so
Yeah.
it's a hard thing to go to your doctor and your doctor not know, because and I'm not making excuses for any doctors. This is one of my biggest frustrations in life. But I
Mhm.
also have been doing a lot of therapy lately. So I've been trying to like switch perspectives of other
Mhm.
people and kind of thinking like not knowing is also really frustrating. And that does not mean they get to gaslight you. That does not mean they get to tell you that you're making this up. That does not mean any of that. But finding the right provider is such a hard thing. And I want to validate that as well. And you've been through a lot and you're doing pretty good these days.
Yeah.
You're
I'm
currently
well,
at work.
I am. I am at work, but not working. I'm off of work scheduled time. Scheduled work time is over.
I
I did clear
appreciate
this
it.
with my boss.
I do appreciate you making that time. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. A long way back. I'm
Yeah.
going to link that. But could you tell us
Yeah.
about that book? I'm going to
Oh my
link
gosh,
it
it's
below,
been
but
so long. There's different I was like, when I thought about the book, I was like, "Oh, that title, that book, it's been so long." I
mm-hmm,
remember reading it because my dad was really sick at the time. So there's different
mm-hmm,
versions of it. Well, there's different titles of that book, but this one was about it was sad. That's how I remember it.
mm,
It was somebody was dying, and it was Brandon Hallerpen, maybe? I would have to Google it on my phone.
I'll find it.
Yeah. Um, and I was trying to find it because there was a quote at the very end that I remember falling in love with. And it's like one of those moments where I can picture reading it. And I was reading it in the parking lot of church one day. Uh,
Uh,
you hear me talk about church and bikes. That's my life.
love
Uh,
it.
yeah. And just crying because I was like, oh my gosh, it was just the best. And I want to say it was like about rock and roll and music and, um, so it's been so long, I don't even remember that much about the book, but it popped into my head so strong when I was
Uh-huh.
thinking about what to write about this podcast. So I feel like I need to go back and read it.
I love it. Well, I'm going to link it in case anyone else wants to make the journey down that book. So throughout your whole journey, which has been, you've said about 3-ish years,
Yeah.
you've tried a lot of different things, just like most
Oof.
people with a vestibular disorder do.
Yeah.
And I want to remind everyone first that something that works for you is probably or maybe not going to work for the next person, but it might work for the person after that. So we're always using discretion. That's why there's a medical disclaimer in the forefront of this podcast. But I
Mhm.
also want to remind everyone that there you are allowed to bring up things you think might work for you with your healthcare team. So, what are some things that you feel like have been the most helpful, um, or the most helpful thing? You can list as many as you like or talk about as many as you like, but that have really helped you along this journey?
I think there's been a couple, I would say, that I've learned. I definitely a good healthy diet. And I know this at least for myself that when I always say going off the rails because I will eat pretty
Uh-huh.
clean and healthy and then I'll get sick of it and then I'll fly off the rails and eat really horrible and it will flare up something horrible.
Mhm.
Um, and but I do notice that when I stick to whole foods, healthy foods, when I stay away from sweets, which are like my downfall in life, I tend to do a lot better. Um, when I stay moving, when I sleep. Sleep is a big one for me because I can tell by the end of the week, especially by Wednesday, it'll start hitting me a little bit harder. Um, by Friday, I can tell my dizziness will be I'm a little more wobbly by Friday, so sleep is a big one for me. Um, my biggest thing I think is the positivity as well. So, especially in the beginning of this, I think it's very easy to get sucked down that rabbit hole of everybody else's journey. And I think there's all those like online support groups. And that's kind of where I saw myself was like a lot of negativity and a lot of journeys and stories that were not good. And so then you start to see yourself that way. And that was one of the things in vestibular fit that I was like, wow, there's positive stories. There's a light at the end of these tunnels. There is people can get better from this. And so I really had to like I put my blinders on to all of the negativity and I just refused to let any of that into my life. I was like, I don't care what it is, if it's medication, if it's side effects, whatever it is, I'm not reading it. Um, and I just focused on all the positive things. And for me, that made a huge difference. And so, like, one of the biggest things for me was recognizing like the blessings in the journey. That for me was a game changer because I think we can all agree that this is tough. It's a life changer.
Totally.
Um, it is, and some days are just downright rotten. But what I started to do was look at what were the good things it was doing in my life. And some of the greatest things that it did for me was it like really connected me with my fiance at the time. And it made me realize like obviously I loved him, but I realized like how amazing he was and how amazing our relationship was. And we ended up getting married. And like, yay. Like and it just grew my faith in ways I never would have imagined, right? And it strengthened my relationship with God and I saw like all of these amazing people that had been placed in my life that were helping me. Like I looked at my vestibular therapist and I was like, I knew that all of these people weren't just put in my life by chance. I knew that even though I was going through this horrible thing, I knew that these people were here for a reason. Um, and I really took the time to embrace like the beauty of the firsts. Like I felt like I didn't take anything for granted. Like I remember walking on the beach for the first time, which this might sound so silly, but these were things that really triggered me at first, like the water. I had to do vestibular therapy by a lake to get used to the water again. And so the first time I walked on the beach with my husband, I was like crying underneath my sunglasses. And the first time that I hiked by myself and took a bike ride by myself and like reading books again because I couldn't read for a while, like nothing was ever like the beauty of those things were never lost on me. And that helped fuel my fire. Um, and like just like the love that I began to have for my family and friends and understanding myself better, that was huge. Um, And something that really, really helped me, and again, I know that I infuse a lot of faith into what I do. Um, but I had heard a sermon, like this was kind of in the thick of in my illness, and what I had heard was that God will work all things out for your good and his glory. And I just remember like scribbling those notes down on a notepad, and I held on to that, and I just believed in it. And I one of the things that I got to see was all of that unfold in front of me. And I feel like that was one of the most beautiful gifts that I've ever gotten to see and to hold on to. Um, and so like my own like spiritual growth to me was like such a great gift through all of this. Like as much as I hated it, like, the growth was so hard, but it was beautiful in all of this. And so
Absolutely.
if this is what it had to be to get me to where I am right now, then that's okay. And that's what got me through.
What an amazing, beautiful way of putting that. I thanks for putting together those words. It really makes a lot of sense, and it's it's such a journey that you go on with a vestibular disorder, and
It is.
I remember a lot of those firsts, and I remember looking at them, and I think, like, the pride in which you allow yourself to hold in doing these things again, but also, like, the step back that you can take and be like, "Wow, I can look at this and look at
Mhm.
kind of what journey this is," and I know you're like, I focused on a lot of the positivity. And I think a lot of people get caught up in like the toxic positivity. But throughout this conversation, you're kind of going back and forth between, yes, there's lots of positives and good things here and all of that. But also, it's allowed to suck sometimes.
Mhm.
And that kind of juxtaposition between the dark and the light and that sort of yin and yang or juxtaposition, whatever you want to call it, is also a really beautiful balance that you have, and kind of getting to a place where you are like, you know what, this can suck sometimes or this can happen sometimes, but I know what to do when it is. Or even if I don't know what to do, I can reach out to my family and friends and kind of build that relationship, be in service to others, which is such a big part of honestly managing a vestibular disorder, is having that community and volunteering and being helpful and all that, even when it feels impossible,
Mhm.
can be such a helpful thing. And I think you really got about this journey in a really amazing way.
And I will say, like, honestly, there are days it is rotten. Like,
Totally.
we've kind of I think we just talked about that the other day on when you talked about, our wins, and I was at work, and I said, "I had a vestibular, flare up at work," and, um, I don't talk about it openly a lot, but I'm like, "These are things that happen in the middle of a day," and my day can literally go sideways, like, physically sideways. Um, I've just found ways to laugh at it now, and, um but it's taken me 3 years to do that,
Totally.
where normally I would come in my office and hide and I don't wanna say be ashamed of it, but I would hide it from people.
Mhm.
And now I can be open and say, "Okay, I just had this happen. Let y'all can make fun of me for it because this is what I did, and it's okay." Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, there's days it's rotten, but you
Totally.
move on and you move to
Mhm.
the next day, and the next day is usually better, and
Mhm. Absolutely.
we
That
do it,
mind
right?
exactly, that mindset, that ability to say, "Hey, this sucks, and this is what I'm gonna do about it, and tomorrow hopefully is better, and I can talk about it openly and hopefully know what's going on in my body," and even if you're at a place right now where you've been dealing with this for years and years and years and you still don't know what's going on, these
Mhm.
same principles still can apply that you've been talking about. And I think
Yeah.
that's so, so great that you've done that. I appreciate you sharing.
I will tell you, like, in the 3 years, one of the things that I realized, I still I still struggle to talk about it and to say, like, I was in physical therapy the other day, and my physical therapist noticed, and you can probably see it when I'm talking, that my face is lopsided on one side. And she was like, "Your face is drooping, Sarah. We need to, like, your neurologist needs to look at this. I think there's something going on." Um, And that really scared me. And so when I got home, I was very quiet for a couple of days. And my husband, I think, was like, took that offensively, you know. He's like, "You're quiet. Like, what's going on? Are you mad at me?" And I was like, so I finally told him, I'm like, "No, I'm scared." But it took a lot of courage for me just to say those words, like, "I am scared." And in
Uh-huh.
the past, I would have never said that. So, like, I don't even know the point of me saying that, but, like, it takes I don't even know the point. Like, I'm just it takes a lot of time for, like, things to happen and, like, for us to
Totally.
say things and, like,
Mhm.
for things to come about.
Yeah. There's a lot of shame and a lot of stigma in invisible conditions and
Yes.
invisible illnesses, and you can go about the world and life and not share this, but it tends to be harder and more difficult to not share this thing.
Yes. We
Over
hide a lot.
time, we hide a lot as humans. We put
Mhm.
on a front and say, like, everything's fine, everything's happy, everything is my Instagram. Like,
Yes.
that's kind of where we've gotten to these days.
Yes.
But like, even people on my Instagram be like, "Oh, how are you so good all the time?" And I'm like, "I'm not. Like,
Yeah.
that's not real life. This is a highlight reel of my life. I share with you guys the good things." So I've been trying to make a concerted effort to do more of like the not so good things, but it's hard. You
It's hard.
want everyone to see you as this like happy, healthy, functioning in a normal in quotes way.
Yeah.
But when something is going wrong, I think that we actually find that there's more people there to support us than we think, whether it's
Yeah.
your partner, your friends, your family, when you are open about it. And I find that kind of just like you said, when we start to hide things and shame ourselves for things and think like, oh, there's this stigma, it's never going to get better, XYZ, it can actually cause more like tearing apart. Like
Mhm.
your husband said, "Are you mad at me?"
Mhm.
Right. And you're like, "You've done nothing wrong. I'm not mad." And everyone fights, like, that's fine. But like in this situation, I'm not mad. I'm
I'm
just
just
really
scared.
terrified that
Yeah.
something could be wrong.
Yeah.
And
But
I
it took
think
me 3 years to finally say that, and I was so proud of myself. I was like,
I'm
"Whoa,
proud of you.
I just told him I'm scared."
I'm proud of you. That's
Yeah.
a lot of internal work that you've done
Yeah.
through all of this. And I'm really impressed and proud, but never surprised that
Yeah.
you were able to do that. And it is a really, really hard thing. And so
It
I'm
is.
proud of you for doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I know we touched on this for 1 second before, but you were like, "That's my life, church and bikes." So let's talk
Church
about
and bikes.
bikes. Church and bikes.
Jesus and bikes.
That's a lovely life, honestly.
I do like it.
That's great. So let's talk about bikes. I know when you first joined, you're like, "I'm never gonna bike again." That was the
Never.
narrative.
Yeah.
And now we're here. And so I'd like to, if you could tell us kind of about that journey and where you started, where you are now.
Oh my gosh. I man, I never thought I would ride my bike again. Ever, 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 ever. And I have to tell people, like, I don't wanna say biking was my life, but it was such a big part of my life. I loved my bike. I love to mountain bike. I love to bike on the road, on the trails. My son and I used to take our bikes off of big jumps and like do crazy stuff that moms probably shouldn't do. Um, it just was everything to me. And so the summer, all of this started for me like late, maybe January. The summer leading up to that, my sister and I had just done our first century ride, so like 100 miles. First time I had ever done that.
Oh my gosh.
I know, it was amazing. It was amazing. I mean, just the training up to that point was so much fun. My sister and I are like best friends. We had a blast doing it. Met so many incredible people. One of my biggest milestones. Just amazing, and we did it raising
Totally.
money for a fundraiser, like it was, for the Pablo Foundation. We raised a whole bunch of money for them, and
Cool.
so, yeah, it was great, um, and so, right, I hit my peak, and then this happened, and I went from, like, peak to the lowest of my lows, and so that made it so much harder for me, um, and so I kept in my brain, I was like, I'm never going to get back there. And I kept like thinking to myself, I kept comparing myself. Like my physical therapist was like, you can get back there. Like you're going to ride your bike again. But I was comparing myself to Sarah, like 100-mile Sarah. And she's like, let's just go around the block. Uh, and I'm like, no, I can ride 100 miles.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. And so when we started to try to get me back on the bike, I just refused to listen. Like that was my problem. And so when she was like, go around the block or just like ride down the block, I'm like, no, I'm going to ride like a mile. And so it didn't work. I had
Yeah.
oscillopsia. So like my eyes were flickering and things were bouncing around. And um, so I would ride my bike and then it would throw me into vestibular attacks and I would get really nauseous. Um, and so it just it made me so uncomfortable to ride, and I really struggled with that because I was like, "How could this be? How can this be happening to me?" Like, I
Totally.
love to ride my bike, and this was my life, and this made me so happy, and, like, you almost think, like, "How can this be happening, God?" Like, "How can you do this to me?" I know that sounds crazy,
Hmm.
like, I didn't
No, it
actually say
doesn't.
that to God, but it's like, "How can you do this to me?"
Totally.
Um, I cried Y I used to be like, I cried over my bike. I, like, lamented over my bike,
Hmm.
and, it was finally after about a whole year of vestibular therapy that I could get back on my bike again, and I finally had to listen to my vestibular therapist because
Hmm.
she knew what she was talking about when she said, "Just go in small increments, like, go around the block." Um,
Hmm.
and I did my first 20-minute ride with my sister.
Hmm.
And so we were like we just did like a little pathway and it felt pretty yucky afterwards. The ride would always feel good. It was like the afterward.
Yeah. The
And I
rebound.
don't the rebound, I don't know what that is or how to describe the feeling.
Yep. It happens to almost everyone. It
Yeah, it's a
happens to so many
feeling
people. Hmm.
and it's a yucky feeling.
Totally. Your brain says, we're moving, we're moving, we're moving. And then you stop that movement and your brain goes, wait, we're still moving, right? And
Yeah.
the adjustment period is just longer. Like if you
Yes.
go on a
Yeah.
long car ride, if you go on a 10-hour car ride, most people are going to feel like they have funky legs, or if you stay too long on a boat, you might have sea legs. That's normal. It happens to people. But when you have a vestibular disorder, it happens for longer, it lasts for longer times, and that's when it becomes abnormal. But people on treadmills, people on bikes, I find this is really, really, really common
Mm.
where you get off and your brain and vestibular system aren't communicating that you're no longer moving. And so you're like, I still feel this, like I'm going forward type of sensation. And that's where that comes from.
And I would
Mm-hmm.
always do like I remember you telling me to just like stand, up against a wall or like
Mm-hmm.
I would stand over
Yeah.
my bike and like just get grounded.
Grounded.
Um, I don't know where that came from. Um, and so I got through that bike ride and then I just remember like I was sitting at work one day and I'm like, I'm doing this. Like I was obsessed that day. Like I don't even think
Uh-huh.
work was on my mind. I was like, I'm getting on my bike. Like I'm leaving work and I'm getting on my bike. It was March in Milwaukee. It was cold, but I'm like, I'm getting on my bike.
Oh my God. Wisconsin in March
It's
is not
not.
warm for a bike ride.
It was warm enough that day. I think it was like 54 degrees
Oh,
and
that's
that
pretty
that
nice for
was
March.
it was. And I have pictures. I'm like, I'm doing this. And I did it.
I remember.
I just it was the day, right? I put my
Mhm.
AirPods in and there's a band that I love called Need to Breathe. I popped those AirPods in and I swear to you like the sun was hitting me. It's like one of those moments where you're like the angels carried me. Like I felt like I had wings. I did 18 miles. I don't know where that came from. One of my favorite bike rides ever.
Oh.
And it was like amazing. And like that summer to me, this is what I've noticed like, my body is just funky. Like, that summer, I could stretch my bike rides out and, like, I could get the mileage, right? Like,
Hmm.
I could do 10 miles, 15, 12, 20, 25, 30. And so I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna do that again this summer."
Mm-hmm.
And this summer my body's like, no, you're not. You're
Mm-hmm.
absolutely not going to do that. And I could feel it right away this year. I couldn't get any mileage. I can get like
Mm-hmm.
10 or 12 miles, and I'm not there this summer for some reason. I can't like ride my Peloton, which is totally fine. I don't know if it's like the visual and the movement. Um, so I've just realized like nothing is like a steady course for me. Things change,
Mm-hmm.
and I've
Yeah.
kind of learned that I just have to change with it and be okay with it. Um, but I can ride my bike like on my trainer inside. So
Mm-hmm.
that's weird, but I can't ride my Peloton.
There's a lot of visual stuff with Pelotons and with being outside.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like one of the things that I learned this summer
Mm-hmm.
that I appreciate, because at first I was really bummed. I'm like, well, why can't I go long for these like long, wonderful rides? I just again changed my perspective because I was
Mm-hmm.
getting kind of angry. And then I had this really great ride in the morning and it was early and the sun was coming up, and I learned to just appreciate like the landscape. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was like watching things as it would change, right? Like it was just like one of those morning where like the deer were out and the birds were singing and the
Oh,
flowers were changing. And you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
I learned to appreciate this summer, like instead of time and mileage, appreciating the people. Like the kids were
Mm-hmm.
smiling on their bikes, and like I got to race this little kid on like it was I don't even think he had like training wheels, and um you just learn to appreciate things in a different way. And maybe next summer will be totally different. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like whatever my body is going to do next year. I don't know. I'm just going to make it work, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
gives me. I'm not sure. And that's kind of where I'm at with it. Like this year, I've just really appreciated riding alone and like
Mm-hmm.
having time with my thoughts and my feelings and my emotions. I sound like a total therapist right now. um, but like for me, I feel like my bike has always been a way for me to like deal with my stress, right? Like I would always
Mm-hmm.
dig in, dive in, and get on my bike and ride away the stress. And like it was about pushing myself and reaching a
Mm-hmm.
goal. Um, and like having this vestibular disorder, especially this year, because it's changed my riding
Mm-hmm.
this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's kind of changed how and why I ride. And so like especially this year, like I feel like it's really kind of hurt a little bit more, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like stripped away my expectations of my ride, and it's like stripped away my ego a
Mm-hmm.
lot. And so it's just given me the freedom to like let go and just get on the bike and just be, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
be. And I think there's a lot of peace in that. And I just really
Yeah.
appreciate that. Like I've just like be. I'm like an 8-year-old again riding my bike.
Yeah.
There's no expectations anymore when I ride my bike, and that's really cool.
You're gonna make me cry. That is
Oh,
really cool. I'm like, that is really cool. And I think that's such a, once again, just a fantastic perspective shift. And I saw something the other day, here it is, um, from just like a bunch of migraine Instagram accounts that I follow about glimmers of the day,
mhm,
that instead of seeking the parts of the day that are so hard and so horrible and so terrible, if once in a while you can just seek like the glimmer of the day, like I can't ride my bike for 100 miles right now, but I can see the little kids I'm in a race with or smiling on their bikes or people on the trail and things like that. Like that's such a glimmer of the day. Like what a wonderful thing to have noticed. And I think getting to notice those things is so awesome.
yeah,
And
it
I'm
is.
happy
It's
for
pretty
you.
cool. Yeah.
It is cool. I remember all the bike rides. The first time you biked across the bridge,
Yeah.
Santa bike ride, all the things. Or was that the
All of
same
'em.
one? Yeah, all the cool
It
things you've done.
They're all special.
They are. Every one of them. Being able to bike is really special.
Yeah. Wait till I get on my snowboard this year. I'm gonna make that a
Heck
thing.
yeah. I think you should.
That's my
I
goal.
definitely think you should. If you need some tips and tricks, let me know. I'm
I will be
your
letting you know.
I'm your snow human.
Love it.
Promise. I love it. Well, anything else about that that you wanted to mention?
No, that's my biking journey.
Awesome. All right. I have some rapid fire questions for you. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay.
I'm ready.
What's your favorite part of vestibular group fit?
I tried so hard to find one thing.
Name as many
And
as you want.
my one thing is everything. Um, but if I had to pick like some things,
Mm-hmm.
my big thing is like the knowledge because I feel like I said knowledge is power. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
also understanding is powerful, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so having that understanding of like for me what was happening in my body, what I could talk to my doctors about, that was so helpful to me. And
Mm-hmm.
so the information that you put out to me is like you can't find that anywhere else.
Mm.
And just like knowing that it's coming from a trusting source is like basically the greatest thing on earth. And
Yay.
the positive stories. Those are like lifesavers to me.
Oh, good. That makes me really happy. Sometimes I'm like, am I making this content for someone? And when someone says they watched it, it just makes me so
Oh,
happy. And
it's
I
amazing.
I will always be everyone's hype woman. Like truly I will. And that is also one of my favorite parts.
I
It's
love it.
just everyone doing cool stuff. Like Wednesday truly is my favorite day of the week. Well, I guess Saturday because I get to read them, and then Wednesday I get to post a couple. But
Even
because
just like even just your Instagram, like you do the really good informational stuff that you
mm-hmm,
put on your website.
mm-hmm,
Like
mm-hmm,
even sometimes just the little Instagram stuff that you put out, I'm
yeah,
like, this stuff is amazing.
thank you.
Like,
Sometimes I
and I
think
can
it's
read it
shame.
1,000 times over, and it's still, I'm like, this is gold.
Thank you. You're so
I
sweet.
love it.
I'm glad it's
And I
helpful.
also
Truly.
love that you will wear sometimes mismatched socks when you work out.
So
And
one
I don't know if
time,
I'm the only one that
no, you're
notices
not.
because I do that all the time.
My socks never match. Today I'm wearing one that's a KB and one
I
with
love
an
it.
orange stripe.
I love it
I
because
can't
I
match my
can never
socks.
find the right socks.
Yeah, neither. My mom told me when I was 8 that it didn't matter. And so I was like, okay.
It doesn't matter.
And someone in vestibular group fit once said it was easier to see my feet when they didn't match.
I
And so
agree.
sometimes I think it's better if I don't match.
See? Perfect. That is
Perfect.
a great thing. It's great.
That's great. There you
Never
go.
stop being you.
Thanks. I won't. Okay, what's your biggest goal that you have reached or want to reach with a vestibular disorder or as a member?
I think honestly, like this is the biggest goal for me is doing this with you. Just
Oh,
because I feel like it's spreading awareness and that to me is if I could do one cool thing, it's this.
you're pretty
Um,
cool.
but if I could do also one other cool thing, it would be getting on my snowboard this winter. I'm not good at it. Like I was just getting down
So,
like the junior hill when all of this hit.
uh-huh.
So if I can make it back down like the junior hill, I would be so incredibly happy this year. I keep saying that
I
when I'm like, I've got to do it this year.
I think you're gonna be able to.
I had
I'm
a
waiting for the
flare up.
post.
That was my goal last winter, and then
Mm-hmm.
I went off the train and ate a lot of bad
Mm-hmm.
stuff. I had a huge
Mm-hmm.
flare up last winter, and so I didn't do it. But so my goal is this winter to
That's
get down
okay.
that junior hill.
I think we beat ourselves up a lot for not meeting like the exact goal
Yeah,
of,
we
but
do.
we have more winters, hopefully. I mean,
We
there's
do.
climate change, but we have more winters currently. So
And our snow was really bad last year too, so I'm gonna blame the snow too.
play in the snow. Come to
Yeah.
Jackson. I'll
Yeah,
snowboard with
yeah.
you.
Oh gosh, that would be amazing.
All right. What's one thing you wish you knew when you got diagnosed that you know now that you're like, dang, I wish I knew that 3 years ago?
My big thing would be that there's hope.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's hope, there's treatment, and that it gets better, that it just takes time,
Mm-hmm.
and that, sometimes it takes a lot more time than we would like, but
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to give it time. Like, I think we would all like to snap our fingers and it would just be better because that would have been amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it just takes time. Like, it took me a
Totally.
good year to feel better,
Mm-hmm.
and that sucked, but it was okay.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I think I always say that if there was a cure, I'd happily give up my job tomorrow.
Yeah.
But for
Yeah.
now, there is time that it's going to take and it does get better. So
Yeah.
I love that advice. And I guess this is sort of the same question 2 times, but what's one piece of advice that you would offer for others going through something similar?
My biggest thing when I thought about this was that it's okay to grieve your life prior
Mm-hmm.
to your diagnosis. Take some time, and I don't want this to sound like rude to anybody. Like, take your
Mm-mm.
time, grieve that life, but then let it go. I
Mm-hmm.
think that it's super important to don't look back, right? Because you have to only look forward. Because I think when you finally stop comparing yourself to that old life and you just look forward, then I think life opens up in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
I think you get that new perspective. I think you get new ideas. You get this new like sense of creativity. I think you start to see with like a different set of eyes, a different like senses emerge. I think you just start to like embrace a new you, even on
Mm-hmm.
days when it feels uncomfortable. You
Mm-hmm.
still, it's like a new you. And I think even on the days when it feels impossible, it still seems possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it allows you to find the gratitude even on those bad days. And I think that makes all the difference.
You have such good words for things. You could host this podcast.
No, no, but I'm
Yeah,
just thankful
yeah.
to be here.
Well, I'm also grateful you are here and for making the time and all the things. I think you're a wonderful human being, and
Oh,
thanks for
thank
sharing
you.
your story.
Right back at you. Thank you for being a part of this with all of us.
It is truly my pleasure. I couldn't imagine my life any other way.
You're doing phenomenal things for all of us, for the vestibular community.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it, and it is my pleasure. Anything else you wanted to say before we go?
No, I really just my big thing is like just like choosing faith, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I have to wake up every day and choose to believe that the path that I'm on now is greater than the path that I was on before. Um and I just would really encourage every single person to just like you don't have to leap onto that, but just like little by little, just
Mm-hmm.
try to just take a little bit of faith every day. Take that with you.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Okay.
I'll see you back in the group.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
Thank you so much for listening today. I'm really excited for this podcast. If you would like to find me on Instagram, give me a follow at the Vertigo Doctor and the podcast at grounded.vestibular.pod. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe to our channel. And if you're interested in working with me, try Vestibular Group Fit, the affordable, comprehensive program that focuses on movement, mindset, support, and education to take you from feeling frustrated and dizzy to feeling in control of your vestibular disorder. Or we can work together one-on-one in California, Virginia, Maryland, Minnesota, New Jersey, New York, Wyoming, and Wisconsin. Your success story begins today. Dizziness does not have to be forever. Let's get you the right tools to thrive. I love you, and I'll see you next time on Grounded.